Okay, so this week we're going to be talking about different types of sports organizations and how funding affects them in different ways. Okay, so we're aware from what we spoke about last week, we have non-profit sports clubs and sports organizations, so clubs that need to be sustainable but they don't provide a dividend or a profit for individuals, and for-profit organizations, which are perhaps your more professional elite clubs. So today we're going to be thinking about how different types of organizations might attract different types of funding and what's going to be likely for them to be able to attract. Okay, so we're going to be thinking about perhaps amateur sports clubs, semi-professional clubs, and perhaps elite professional clubs as well. Okay. So we've got 4 learning outcomes for today. So hopefully by the end of it, you're going to be able to describe the various sources of management and funding for different models of sport. So community, amateur, professional. You'll be able to tell the difference between what an unincorporated sports club is and an incorporated sports club. And we're going to look at legal structures and what the difference is between the two. We're going to think about the different types of structures that are available. So if you wanted to start a sports club after today's session, what are the kind of legal structures that you might adopt and how might funding affect them differently and what are kind of tax implications for those clubs? And then fourthly, we're going to look at what charitable status and community amateur sports club status means for clubs in terms of funding. Okay. So we've got different types of models of sports management. So if you think about how sports clubs perhaps were traditionally run, and to some extent still are today, we've got something called the kitchen table model. And then secondly, we have perhaps what is more an evolved professional model, which is the boardroom model. Okay, and we're going to look into each of these now. So our kitchen table model, okay, it's kind of as the name suggests, the kitchen table is perhaps where we're sitting and doing the work relating to the club. So it's perhaps for volunteers, they're working from home, they're trying to develop a club, kitchen table, because that's where they're sitting and doing their work, okay? So sport can only sustain itself if it has the resources to support its activities. And most sports clubs run on a shoestring budget, so they're trying to not charge their members very much money. Okay, so they're trying to charge their members as little as possible to make it affordable. So this is where volunteers come in. So we can't really afford to pay staff, but we have volunteers that run the club and make it sustainable. Okay, so we've got our volunteer officials and membership fees, which keep the clubs and associations afloat. So in short, the people who played and administered the game provide the bulk of the resource needed for the organization to continue to develop and sustain itself. So known as the kitchen table approach to sports organization management, where the administration of the game was driven by a few officials making decisions from a member's home. Okay, so very kind of grassroots DIY ethos to how we might run a sports club. Okay, we're doing it from home. There's no fancy offices. There's no stadium. It's a kind of grassroots community club. Okay, kitchen table model because we are driving the development of the club with very limited resources. So if we think about what the strengths of this model are, okay, so it ensures the involvement of grassroots players and members provided a strong local community club focus and nurtured a strong set of values that centered on playing the game for its own sake and the commitment ideal of amateurism. So what we mean by this is the people that typically are involved in running these amateur grassroots community clubs are people that were playing the sport themselves but wanted to do something a bit more to support the development of that sport. And so they're people that have played the sport themselves. Perhaps they set up the club themselves and they're involved in its administration and development. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. So we know that we've got the kind of strong set of values instilled there because they're perhaps people that have played for the club for a number of years and perhaps still do play the sport themselves. Okay, and it means that we can ensure the representation of players in the administration of the game. We know that they're not going to start charging really high membership fees because they know what it's like to be a paying member. Okay. And if you think about what that might look like from a kind of governance structure perspective, this is the committee. So you might have a committee involved in the club. You might have a president or a chairperson. And then you typically have a secretary, a vice president, and a treasurer. What do you think are the roles of each of those 4 individuals? So if we've got a chairperson or a president, what do you think the role is of a chairperson or a president within a sports organization? What would a chair do?
I'll just take a guess.
Yeah.
he oversees all the departments
Okay.
in the organization.
Okay.
That's just about it.
So overseeing the organization. Yeah.
All these like different
Different departments.
departments.
So perhaps yeah. Okay.
The
Quite right. Yeah.
the ultimate decisions will be taken by him.
Okay. Yep.
Like
Good.
some difficult decisions will have to be taken by him
Yeah.
because their funds are limited.
Yep.
So he'll decide which ones are most feasible to invest.
Okay. Good. Yes. So we're thinking here about the chairperson, he or she. Okay. They're essentially there to chair the board of the organization. So the board being the different board members, and the chair is there ultimately to try and drive the strategy for the organization. So they are responsible for coordinating the board, helping drive strategy, helping making sure that it's governed properly. And what do you think their relationship is with the finances of the organization? How does finance come into play here? Treasurer, yeah, okay. So what would the role of the treasurer be then?
He will look the financial department mainly of the organization.
Okay, so treasurer is going to make sure that our finances are operating sustainably, hopefully, and making the rest of the board members aware of the financial position of the club or the organization. Okay, they're going to be responsible for putting the accounts together that might need to be shared with the members. Yeah, okay. What do you think the secretary will do on the board? What's the role of the secretary?
Like supervising day-to-day function.
Yeah, yeah.
Like he'll be updating them on how it's the overall struggle. The club or something is running.
Okay, yeah, good.
Day-to-day activities.
Yeah. So secretary, the role of the secretary is really to ensure the organization is compliant, both with the club's or the organization's own rules. So there might be a constitution or a set of articles that sets out what the organization has to do. So the secretary is responsible for making sure that the club is compliant with that and stays on the right side of the law. They'll also be responsible perhaps for organizing the meetings for the board, making sure that minutes are taken for the board meetings. Okay, so they have a very important role to make sure that the organization is not doing anything illegal and is operating as it says it would be. Okay, so we might have a board in a kind of a grassroots community club of maybe, this is a suggested, there's 9 members on the board, okay, or the committee. Now, obviously we've got the 4 that we've said there. We've got our chairperson or president, secretary, treasurer, and vice chair or vice president. And then they suggested perhaps 5 ordinary committee members. Now, if you're quite a developed community grassroots club, you might have some members of staff as well, okay? So the reason that we have this delineation or this box around this top bit, why do you think there's a delineation between the committee and everyone below this box? What's the key difference between the roles here?
That's a decision making, and
Good.
this is like
Yeah, good. So our board or our committee, okay, these guys, they're going to be responsible for the strategy of the organization and decision making. So key strategy making, okay? What do these guys down here do?
Operations.
Yeah, good. So they're in charge of actually making sure the day-to-day operations of the club happen, okay? And the reason I was a bit hesitant, Rich, with regard to the club manager, that's perhaps the types of things that you were talking about, overseeing the management of the club. That's perhaps what they would do as opposed to the chair. So these guys, they don't really get, in theory, they shouldn't really be getting involved in the day-to-day running of the club. What they should be doing is really setting the strategy for the future of the club, okay, making sure the finances are sensible, making sure that the organization is going to be sustainable for the future, okay. Whereas the guys down here, they're actually the ones that are tasked with development of the organization and the day-to-day operations of it. Okay. So on the other hand, that's kind of our amateur grassroots community sports organizations. On the other hand, we've got this boardroom model. Okay. So if we think about the commercialism of sport, so what we mean by commercialism is the way in which it's developed into this global industry today that, charges, as we were talking about, going to Anfield, charging £100 for a ticket. Back in the day, it wasn't worth £100. It was, a pound, if that. Now it's this big global entity, financial kind of huge institutions that we're talking about. So we've got this kind of spread in which the sport has been commercialized, and you can buy all sorts of different merchandise around the club, and you can pay for a subscription to watch it. Okay, so that's what we were talking about when we're talking about how it's become commercial and become monetized in different aspects. Okay, so we saw this kind of really boom in the 70s, 80s, and particularly with the Premier League in the 90s. So with that, we need to try and think about how the sport is governed. We can't perhaps sub to some of those kind of models that we had previously. It needs to be a more professional setup that can't really be reliant on volunteers. We can't really rely on volunteers when we get to the size of the organizations we're going to be talking about here. So when we think about a continuum of how developed and how professional sports are, we've got sport at the elite end of the continuum. Okay, we've got this. We've kind of lost some of these amateur values. We're paying players hundreds of thousands of pounds a week, whatever kind of sport we're talking about, and develop many of the features of commercial business in their attempts to increase the scale of their operations and improve the standard of their competitions. So they're always continuously thinking about how they can generate more revenue for the organization. Okay, that's kind of part of their remit, is really to think about how do they generate more revenue to support their activities, to be more competitive on the pitch, to try and win more trophies. Okay. So a sport that's become more commercialized, it's changed the way it's done business, and in particular developed much stronger links with the corporate sector, which saw sport as a great vehicle for promoting their products and attracting audiences. And when you do sports marketing next semester, we'll talk about kind of the role of sponsorship and how important sponsorship can be to sport. Okay. So we're thinking now more about clubs not being based on amateur values, but we're thinking more about how do we monetize it? How do we become more competitive? It's not necessarily about participation. It's more about competition and being the best or trying to win trophies. Okay. So we've got a slightly different model here. What's the first thing that strikes you about this model as opposed to the last one? What would be your gut reaction when you see that compared to the previous one?
A lot more organization and structure.
Yeah, much more bigger for starters, and more departments. We've got more different roles, but again, we still have our board. Okay, so previously it was called a committee. When it becomes a company, it's probably going to be a board of directors. So we've got a board of directors. We've got a chair. This is chairman. It should just say chair, because it could be obviously we have female chairs as well, and then directors. Okay. A chief executive officer, that's the equivalent to what our club manager was, the person that's tasked with developing that organization. And then we've got our different departments. So we've got commercial, corporate relations, head of football, financial. So numerous different people in each department, not just one or two in each. Okay. And as we think about that kind of professionalism of sport, going from those amateur values to that more professional contemporary structure we've got, so we can look at Andref and Strudenhaar, who extended that kitchen table corporate boardroom model of financial progress, and they proposed a 3-stage. So our first one is that kind of kitchen table model, the amateur structures. Our second one would be perhaps traditional professional structures. And our third one is kind of what we see today with contemporary professional structures with really huge numbers of staff involved, different kind of governance structure, finance officers, etc. Okay. So our first one, the amateur structure, as we say, that's equivalent to the kitchen table model of sports management referred to earlier. And the amateur structure is a member-focused with an emphasis upon participation. So as we were talking about, it's not necessarily about making money, it's about getting people involved in playing the sport. So it might be, you guys might be members of sports clubs, and depending on how that club is structured, it's probably about getting people involved in playing sport and turning up and participating. It's not necessarily of course you want to win stuff, but it's more about the participation and getting people involved for the health benefits, for the physical activity benefits. Okay. So these are the types of clubs we're talking about here. Narrowly supported pathway to elite sports. So not many of these people will perhaps go on and play professionally, although there is a pathway there for them if they are really successful. Financial viability. So we're thinking here probably mainly around membership fees. That's going to be our main source of revenue for these organizations. They're going to largely live off membership fees. Gate receipts are going to be fairly limited. It might be a very small source of income, but it's not going to be like a Liverpool that we're talking about, or a Golden State Warriors if we're talking about basketball. We're thinking here about very, very small organizations. We might have donations, so they might go out and get grant funding to do different projects, and they might sell food or concession income in some countries. Our second kind of model is a traditional professional structure, okay? And this is phase 2 in that pathway, more heavily dependent on sponsorship and government subsidies, whilst maintaining its gate receipts and local support. This structure, which is primarily concerned with sports development, is alternatively viewed as a sports-centered archetype and is the forerunner of the corporate sports model. So here we're thinking perhaps about sports governing bodies that are responsible for national teams. So you could take rugby, for example. Perhaps the Scottish Rugby Union might be seen as the development of rugby as opposed to a particular club, okay? And then finally, we've got our contemporary professional structure, and that's phase 3 in this continuum, more heavily geared to corporate support, so likely to get large amounts of sponsorship money, likely to sell a lot of merchandise, okay, likely to have large broadcast income, and its brand image and kind of network of sponsors is very important to it. So the focus here is on the revenue generation rather than the sports development, and alternatively viewed as a business center archetype. So we're thinking here about how do they maximize its revenue structures, and this is where we see clubs that perhaps have share capital and will be on the stock exchange. So you could perhaps go and buy shares in some of these clubs. So Manchester United, for example, you could go and buy shares in Manchester United if you wanted to, and that's a source of revenue to the club that they can choose to invest in the stadium or playing squad. Okay. So a little activity for you. Hopefully it should work. Everyone able to get onto Canvas on their laptop if they've got it? So if you can get onto Canvas, it's going to work best on a laptop if you've got one, but don't worry if you don't, you can perhaps write it down. And you're going to be able to download a document that looks like this, okay? And what I'd like you to do is, using this key, add in how important you think these sources of revenue are to each of these 3 types of sports organisation that we've looked at, okay? So the amateur clubs, how important do you think gate receipt is going to be to it? Is it going to be of no importance to the club? Is it going to be of some importance to the club? Or is it going to be highly important to the club? Okay, so just go through and for each type of sports organisation, populate that grid. Does that make sense? Anybody not able to get onto Canvas and have access to the module yet? No? Okay. If you want to discuss with whoever you're sitting next to, please do.
Yeah. So I don't know how to even edit it.
How are we getting on? Okay. You can't. So that's it. You would need to perhaps download it and then open it in PowerPoint. So next, it's okay this week, but next week we're going to be doing some stuff on spreadsheets. So if you haven't got a laptop, try borrowing one from the library, and they can loan you one, because we'll need to use Excel. And you can try doing it on your phone, but it will be much easier on a laptop with a big screen. Yeah, I know I'm old, but I'm old and we prefer laptops and big screens. But trying to do it on your phone will be hard. You guys okay? Yeah.
Download it with PowerPoint.
Okay, how we doing? Finished? Yeah? Close? Need a couple more minutes or? A couple more minutes, okay.
PNP. Go see.
Okay, let's go through the. Now, there's no sort of right or wrong necessarily, so don't worry if this doesn't look exactly like yours. Some of this will be a bit of a judgment to some extent. But if we have a look, so we can see here gate receipts to amateur, kind of not that important, but kind of some importance. But as we progress to the traditional professional and contemporary professional, it's going to be an important source of revenue for us. Particularly as our costs are going to be higher, we're potentially paying players, paying more members of staff, so that kind of source of revenue is going to be more important. Our membership fees are going to be very important to our amateur clubs. They're probably going to be our single most important source of income. We need to have a good number of people paying to make the club sustainable. Perhaps less so with the second two. Okay, if at all. Cash donations, again, going to be very important to an amateur club that perhaps has different objectives, more about getting people participating, more about community development. Okay, so going to be very important if people make donations to the club, but perhaps less important for the second two. Government subsidies, so grant funding from government. You might get some for an amateur sports club, but it's going to be more important perhaps for traditional professional in particular. Perhaps their main source of funding would come from a body like Sport Scotland or Sport England, okay? And then contemporary professionals, again, they might have some government subsidies. One of the news stories this week is around Manchester United potentially building a new stadium with some government funding to help develop what they're going to call the Wembley of the North. Okay, so there's some Labour government support there for them. Food and drink sales could be quite important to amateur sports club, depending on whether people sort of come and watch them and watch their matches. And again, somewhat important. Sponsors of advertising could be a big source of revenue for them as well, but more likely to be important for our contemporary professional clubs. Merchandise, unlikely for amateur level. But again, contemporary professional is where you would perhaps go to the store and buy a cricket jersey or a rugby jersey, okay? And then finally, television rights fees. Very unlikely to have somebody pay for the right to broadcast some amateur sports. But again, very important. And again, this is going to be the biggest source of revenue for these contemporary professional clubs, depending on the sport in which they are in. Okay, does that make sense? How different sources of revenue affect different types of organizations? Okay, so a little quiz for you. If you could scan that QR code, that will take you to a Mentimeter quiz. And don't worry if you've missed it. It will be coming back in a minute. Okay, so you could go to menti.com. If you look at the bit at the top there, if you didn't have a chance to scan the code, you can go to menti.com and pop that code in at the top, that 8-digit number. I think if you really want, you can change your little picture, and you can change the name of your character as well. I think we should have 12 of you. Anybody not able to get on? Got it? Everybody else okay? Yeah? 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 Okay? Yeah? Everyone here okay? Yeah? Okay. Oh. Okay, sorry, I need to start the quiz. Okay, so you get more points the faster you answer. So which financial model sees the administration of a sports club driven by a few individuals making decisions from a member's home? Yep, good. We've got our kitchen table model. Question 2. Which of the following is a benefit of the kitchen table model? Good. Yep. So we've made sure we've kept the involvement of individuals. Question 3. Which of the following is a benefit of the boardroom corporate model? Okay, good. So we're going to develop some stronger links with the corporate sector, hopefully have some sponsorship or hospitality. How many phases did Andreff and Staudenhaar propose there were in the development of sports financial progress? No? It's all stuff we've looked at. So we've got the 3 stages. What were the 3 stages?
Amateur, contemporary, professional, and traditional, professional, and
Excellent. Yeah, good. Good, amateur. What is the second phase of the 3-phase model? Yeah, the traditional professional structure. 3 more questions. What is the 3rd phase of the 3-phase model? Yeah, good. Okay, 2 more questions. Question 8. Which of the following funding sources is not a relevant funding source to amateur sports organisations? Yep, good. So unlikely to get much television for amateur sports. And then last question. Which of the following funding sources are amateur organisations highly dependent upon? Yeah, on membership fees and registration fees. Good. So the winner was Dr. Centipede. Who was Dr. Centipede? Well done. You enjoyed that? Don't worry, there's plenty more. Okay. So, if we think about how we looked a little bit there at governance as well. So we're thinking about the structures of those different types of organisations and how they interact with finance. And we spoke about the role of the treasurer, but actually important really for all the different members of the board to have an understanding of finance and how finance is going to impact them. Okay. So a few different questions for you, right? I want you to think about these scenarios. Imagine that you are on the board of a amateur community sports club. Okay, so you could be the treasurer, you could be the chair, you could be the secretary. Okay. If I gave you this scenario, I want you to have a think about what you would do. Okay, so you're going to be heading away for on holiday for a month. Okay, family holiday, and the club treasurer will have a few bills to pay whilst you're away. And he's going to need you to sign a few blank checks for him to keep secure in a safe until they are needed. Okay, so he's a family friend, the treasurer, your son's godfather, no less. What would you do in this situation? Would you sign the checks? Would you not sign the checks? What would you do? Any thoughts? Have a little think about it. Okay, come back and discuss it in a minute. Option 2, okay, or scenario 2. So our club shower has broken down. It's the height of the season, so it's in the middle of summer, very hot and sweaty, and money is tight. A club member has said that they can get their brother-in-law to carry out the repairs during a night next week. They're going to pay cash in hand to do it, to get a good price. Would you go ahead and take them up on the offer? After all, cash is king. Okay, so would you pay cash to your one of the club members' brother-in-law to fix the system, cash in hand? Okay. Question 3. A friend of your husband has applied for a job at your club and has asked you to get coffee to chat about the interview. They don't know you're going to be on the interview panel. Would you meet him for a coffee? Okay. Have a little think about what you'd do. Question 4. Your club bar manager has asked for £500 cash. He says he's secured a good deal on a shipment of wine for an event coming up. Do you get the administrator to organise the money? Every penny saving is really needed in these tough times. What would you do? And then finally, a member of your committee has suggested that the contract for the grounds maintenance should just be extended again to his friend's firm rather than waste time getting new quotes. Do you go ahead and extend this contract? Okay. What I'd like you to do is perhaps in your groups, whoever you're sat on a table with, have a discussion about what you would do in each of those 5 situations. Okay, the slides are available on the canvas if you want to have a look to flick through them. Okay, just spend a couple of minutes thinking about what you would do in each scenario.
No.
No.
Why?
Yeah.
That's also why. Because
Professional, you want left.
Like
Yeah, if you are running a club.
no, like if you spend if you give the blank check and they spend and it's a bad decision, then you lose money.
You can't do anything to respond.
Rather like a bad decision will cost money. Club more.
The club show was just a bit out of luck. In the mid of the season, it should be repaired anyway. But it's a necessary thing. So I need to put it. If I have no way, I need to give cash in hand. But the other opinion that I have is like giving cash in hand won't be in the record of the so yeah, 50-50.
That must be another way, like a joint account. It's a joint account, like the check.
Professionally, no. Yes, we have to be ethical now.
First one? No, yeah. He's saying yes.
What type of wine is it?
I think this one we yes.
Yeah, but it's like recommend the cash in hand or just the cash.
That's fine. Cash in hand is not talking about that. It's asking for a budget of 500 like that.
So you think
I mean, we had secured a good deal on a shipment of wine. Even coming up, it will be good.
So it's a negotiable for the club. So it must be written on the book. So
Second no.
Like if the maintenance team didn't make any mistakes, it's fine.
New code can be short. But yeah, depends, no?
Yeah, I mean,
Depends.
Mark, sorry, criminology?
No.
All right.
Sorry.
It's okay.
what is
Good for united about.
How we doing?
Yep.
Yep. Group over here.
just spare us some time?
Okay. How we doing here? Yeah. You ready? Almost. Okay.
Let's do put hot water in thermos.
I mean, it's plasma.
Will they stay hot?
Yeah.
Chairman.
I will get that straight up.
I mean, he also.
He beat me right at the I was picking the afternoon.
When you have match the Europa League,
Which team we follow?
United.
Europe. Which team are who you play?
Coffee में नहीं जाएगा
Bro, Celtic are playing Manchester City.
Or Real Manchester City or Real Madrid.
You get a new code with a good
It's a draw. It's a draw.
No, the last game.
No. Draw is having game. I mean, it's like Celtic will face Manchester City or Real Madrid. And Real Madrid will face. I mean, the same like that.
So then Madrid and City will play the some point, no?
Madrid after that, if Madrid winning that match, Madrid will face Atletico or Bayern. Atletico Leverkusen. Yep. mean, we'll be facing Celtic here, I think.
If
I
you
mean, if
get
with
tickets-
Celtic, we have home match. I mean, away match here. Anyway, we'll home match.
Home.
I mean, for Celtic, it's home. For us, it's away.
Also
Yeah.
says that like
I mean, we'll go in Celtic, sure.
I will, if at all, it's 500 pounds also.
Yeah. Why not?
Okay, let's talk about what you do. So our first situation, we've got our blank check. What are we going to do in the first situation? So it's the treasurer. He's asked for some cash. He wants to pay for some stuff whilst you're away on holiday. What are you going to do?
No.
You're not going to do it?
No, yeah.
Yes, you're going to do it. Why are you going to do it?
And I will give the blank check
Why?
because that person. I have.
You're a nice person.
I will trust.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
I can trust him.
You trust him?
Yeah.
Okay.
No. We shouldn't sign blank check. We can.
Here's his friends, you can trust them.
Yes, I can trust him.
With a blank check. You can sign some blank checks for me. If you like. Yeah. Okay. So why wouldn't you sign blank
I
check?
mean, we shouldn't sign blank checks. If at all he did some sort of mistake, we will be responsible for that.
Okay.
I mean, it's all about money, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
There
all
will be
about money.
chance of
If a bad transaction for the company gets sanctioned, then it's going to have bad effects.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. What are you going to say?
same sir.
Say.
There is chance.
Okay. What we're going to do in our second situation, club shower. Going to pay cash in hand to get a good price.
No.
No. No again. It's cheap.
It's 50-50. I mean, yes and no. Like, in the middle of the season, it's after all, it's a club shower. I mean, it will be useful for the club members and the staffs, every person.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be like fixed. If we don't have cash, and we should do for the club actually.
Okay.
But the other thing is that if we do in like cash in hand, it's out of the records.
Okay.
So there's
what-
two possibilities here.
What would be the downside of it being cash in hand and not being on the
It will
record?
be not in the records, and
That's evidence.
Okay.
so that's a legal problem also. I mean.
it won't be in the books of accounts.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
It won't be calculated on the taxes
Yeah.
and everything.
Okay. So there could be some tax
Yeah.
avoidance going on. Yep.
And legal problems and all.
Some potential legal problems. Okay. And what about if he fixes the showers and he doesn't do a very good job and you complain? What would you do then? What's going to happen then?
Yeah, we will be responsible for that.
Okay. Good. Would you give the cash?
No, he will give you a blank check.
Okay. So this one about going for an interview to find out a little bit more about the job. Would you go and meet them for a coffee? No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah, he doesn't know I am on the interview panel.
Okay.
So it's all on me, how the information I share. with
Okay.
him. So it's all on me. If I share many details about the interview, then it's like a fraud.
Okay.
But if I don't share anything like important details,
Yep.
then it's okay to chat with him. He don't know I am on the interview panel. So
Okay. All right. Would you tell them that you're on the interview panel?
no.
You wouldn't tell
No
them.
important details I will tell him, but I can just like help him on some matters.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's all. Not-
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? Would anybody else go and meet for a coffee and have a chat? No. Why not? Somebody's got a WhatsApp call. Why not?
I mean, we have to be professional.
Okay. Okay. What would be the big issue of doing this?
I mean, if at all someone finds out and like catches us, we'll be in trouble. Also, we need to be some ethical to
Ethical?
the
Yeah.
job that we do.
Good. Okay. What did you say? Sorry. Somebody said something over there.
No.
No?
Go on.
I made that up. Okay. Okay. Fourth one. Again, we've asked for £500 cash. He's secured a good deal on a shipment of wine for an event coming up. Do you get them to organise the money? Sounds like he's going to save us some money down the road. It's good, right?
No.
No? Why not?
It's still cash,
Yeah. Yes.
cash deals. So
We're going to save money though, right? It's going to be good.
yeah, You can also get good
50-50,
deals.
sir, because it's a good deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if you're buying expired wine for cheap money?
Yeah.
No, but to run an event is a good cash.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then our final one, member of the committee has suggested. So we've got contracts for the grounds coming up. Should we just extend this to the friends firm or get some quotes in?
We can extend if there's no issues with the previous group.
Okay.
And the
You think just
maintaining
extend
team.
it?
Yes.
Yeah, we could wait for the new deals. If we get a good offer, we can choose them.
Okay. So you'd get the quotes.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get the quotes.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Anything different? No. Okay. So probably in our first one, we're looking at we probably shouldn't sign the blank checks. It's probably not a good idea. It doesn't matter how good a friend they are. There's always a possibility of some fraud that could go on. But as I say, if you do want to sign some, then please feel free to. Our second one, this is the showers. Probably best not to do this. So I think you mentioned there could be a possibility of tax avoidance. Okay, what would happen if they break again? There's no kind of document to suggest that this person has carried out the repairs, so we can't go back to them and suggest that they haven't done a good job. Third one, probably best that we don't meet them, despite your best efforts there, maybe. So the key thing here would be around a conflict of interest. You know, we've obviously got a conflict of interest as a personal investment in this, and actually we should probably just remove ourselves from that situation. Fourth one is about the shipment of wine. So again, probably not. Even the best deal might seem may not be what's best for the club. Probably best to investigate the source of the supplier and what terms and conditions they offer. So you're right, if the wine turns up and it's actually gone off or it's just not very nice, how do we actually go about getting our money back for that? And then finally, it's always best to do your research and check what options are available. So even if the person that's doing the ground maintenance is doing a really good job, we probably want to get a couple of quotes just to make sure that we're doing what is best for the club. So our priority here, when you're on the board of an organisation as a committee member or a trustee, is always to the organisation itself to make sure that you can get them the best deals possible. Doesn't necessarily have to be the cheapest, because it could be cheap and not very good, right? But it's about doing what's best for the club, the club's best interests. Okay, I'm going to give you if you want to do some more reading about what we've done there, those slides are available. I'm going to give you a quick break though. So it's 10 o'clock just now. If we could meet back here for 10:15, okay, and we'll do the second half of the session. Yeah. So you've got 12 minutes if you want to grab a coffee or.
Where you get the
He's saying, are you going out?
You want to go for a break?
You have to break, right? Break. For 10 minutes. 10 minutes now.
Yeah.
You're going out.
Like there
No.
are there any no, this way is too confusing.
Don't get lost. Yeah. Where are you guys going? The mountain.
It's something secret.
I
No, just I want to show him for the building I was studying there.
Okay.
Yes, that's last term. What do you find? How?
കണ്ടന്റ് ഫുള്ള് ലോഡ് ചെയ്യാതിരിക്കാനുള്ള ഇത് എങ്ങാണ്ടാണ് ഒത്തിരി നെറ്റ് വലിക്കാതിരിക്കാനായിട്ട് അതുകൊണ്ടാണ് അങ്ങനെ ഇടാതെ. അപ്പം ചില കണ്ടന്റ്സ് മാത്രമേ അത് ഓണായിരിക്കും, ബാക്കിയെല്ലാം അങ്ങനെ രീതിക്കാൻ. ഞാനൊരു സാംസങ് സാംസങ്ങിന്റെ 500 പൗണ്ട് അവന്റെ ബഡ്ജറ്റിൽ നാട്ടില് 90,000 1 ലക്ഷത്തിന് അടുത്ത് വരും. യുണൈറ്റഡിന്റെ കളിയുണ്ട്.
ഞങ്ങളെ ലോക്കൽ ടീമിന്റെ നാട്ടിലൊരു ലോക്കൽ ടീം
അതെങ്ങനെയാണ്?
അത് അവിടെ കാണാൻ പറ്റും, ഇവിടെ കാണാൻ പറ്റും.
ലൈവ് വീഡിയോ കോൾ ചെയ്യോ? ഏത് ലോക്കൽ കളി?
കേരള ബ്ലാസ്റ്റേഴ്സ്
ഇന്നെന്താ കളി?
കളിയുണ്ട്.
ആരായിട്ടാ? ആ ഹോം മാച്ച് ആണോ നമ്മളെ?
എവേ മാച്ച് ചെന്നൈ വെച്ച്. ഇതുവരെ നമ്മൾ ചെന്നൈ ജയിച്ചിട്ടില്ല. പ്ലേ ഓഫ് കിട്ടത്തില്ല. അങ്ങനെങ്കിലും ഒരു റെക്കോർഡ് കിട്ടിയില്ല.
പ്ലേ ഓഫ് കയറാൻ പറ്റിയാലേ
33 പോയിന്റ്സേ വരത്തുള്ളൂ.
കഴിഞ്ഞ കളി തോറ്റുപോയായിരുന്നു.
കഴിഞ്ഞ കളി സമനിലെങ്കിലും ചാൻസ്. കഴിഞ്ഞ തവണത്തെ കട്ട് ഓഫ് വന്നത് 34. ഞാൻ മുമ്പിലുള്ളവർക്കെല്ലാം 28 പോയിട്ടുണ്ട്. നമ്മളെക്കാളും
How are you both?
Yeah.
Good?
Yeah.
Yeah? Enjoying studying?
Yeah, sure.
What have you been up to?
Currently I'm looking for jobs.
You're looking for jobs?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am currently doing some courses of Scottish Football Association.
Okay.
So I am now doing some many free courses.
Yeah.
After that, there are many courses which are paid ones, so I need a job
Yeah.
to pay the fees. So
Yeah.
I'm looking for a job right now.
Are you based in Stirling?
Yeah, I'm
On campus?
yeah, in Leon Crescent.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it's football that you want to work in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And yourself?
I'm staying in Thistle,
At Thistle? Yeah.
looking for part-time job.
Okay. Yeah. Any particular field?
Sports and
Yeah.
football.
Football as well. Okay. Do you know probably the best place to look for jobs is the Sports Scotland website? Sports Scotland. Yeah. So if you search in Google Sports Scotland jobs, these aren't just football, but they have jobs across different sports, different types of roles. Some are voluntary, some are paid. So Stortford Dynamo's volunteer women's head coach, football coach. So this would be paid probably. So there's different opportunities on there that would probably work Yeah, but sometimes the voluntary ones are the opportunity to get the experience.
Yeah, I'm also looking for volunteer ones.
Yeah.
There was one job that shared in our canvas, right? FIFA.
Oh yeah, the analysis.
Yeah.
Are you going to apply?
Yeah, I'm going to apply. First, I need to complete those free courses and add those to my CVs.
Okay.
And then I need to apply.
Yeah. Good. I know this club. If you would like to have an opportunity there, I can certainly put you in touch. It's Women and Girls in Glasgow. So coaches will be supported with badges provided with full kit. So
I have to email them, right?
yeah. Yeah, so it's a good website that lots of different vacancies get posted there.
Yeah, thanks for this.
Sure. You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
I couldn't find a bathroom.
You couldn't find the bathroom? It's to the right, down the bottom, and then go through the door. It's on the left there.
That's a bit confusing.
Yeah, it's just straight down, and then you'll see it.
Okay, straight down.
Yeah, on the right.
All right.
Scottish Football Association. Academic area. Football development. Football development and the coaching. Coaching എടുക്കുക. Find a coaching course. അതിൽ സെർച്ച് ചെയ്യുക. Children well-being in Scottish football. apply now. Mental health in Scottish football apply now. ഇതൊക്കെ ആദ്യമേ എടുക്കണമെങ്കിൽ ഇങ്ങനെ ലെവൽ ഇത് എടുക്കണമെങ്കിൽ ഇത് വേണം, അങ്ങനെ. അപ്പൊ നമ്മൾ ഏറ്റവും താഴത്തുള്ളത് ആദ്യം എടുക്കണം. അപ്ലൈ നിൽക്കുക. analytic.com പറഞ്ഞത് ഇതിൽ നമ്മൾ പുതിയതായിട്ട് രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യാം. രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ അക്കൗണ്ട് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ആവും. അപ്പൊ അതിൽ ഇവിടെ അപ്ലൈ ചെയ്യുക. അപ്പൊ നല്ല കൺഫേം ആവും. ഒരു മണിക്കൂർ ഏറ്റവും മാർക്കൊന്നുമില്ല. അവര് തന്നെ ഉത്തരം ഇതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഉത്തരം കാണിച്ചു എന്നിട്ട് അത് കംപ്ലീറ്റ് ചെയ്യും. അപ്പോൾ നമുക്ക് ആ കോഴ്സ് സർട്ടിഫിക്കറ്റ് ആയിട്ട് കിട്ടും. എന്നിട്ട് അത് CV-യിൽ അങ്ങ് ആഡ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്.
ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ ആയതുകൊണ്ടായിരിക്കും. ഇന്റർനാഷണൽ സ്റ്റുഡൻസ് ഇപ്പൊ താമസിക്കുന്ന അഡ്രസ് അല്ലേ കൊടുത്തത്?
വെരിഫിക്കേഷനുള്ള പ്രൂഫ് അത് പറ്റില്ല.
Okay, found it?
Fine. Good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll continue. You're cold. You have your hat and gloves on.
These,
Yeah.
these when I went out I had.
Okay. You're cold though.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a look at perhaps how sports progress, and we've had a little think about kind of the governance of sports organisations and how they can relate to finance in different ways. So this second part of the lecture, we're going to think about the legal structure of sports organisations and how they adopt different structures and how they are then viewed in eyes of UK legislation and how funding affects them relatively. Okay. So, when we talk about legal structure, what we mean is you'll be familiar with companies, right? The idea of somebody setting up a company. So when they set up a company, it's not just them. They are creating a legal entity which needs to be taxed and can apply for things in its own right. Okay. So what we're talking about here is how do sports clubs adopt different legal structures, whether that be a company or other legal structures that we're going to look at. Does that make sense? Yeah. So depending on the type of legal structure that they adopt, there could be different implications to that club. So why legal structures matter. So the level of protection for those involved in those different sports clubs. We looked at some of those community clubs. If something were to go wrong, there might be some personal liability for those individuals involved, depending on how that sports club is set up. the club's governance arrangements. So we looked at how some of the clubs had a committee, some of the clubs had a board of directors. Okay, so there might be different governance arrangements depending on the type of sports organization and the type of structure that they choose to adopt. Tax implications. Okay, so very important. The clubs have to pay significant amounts of tax to HMRC in the UK, so the kind of government, for any profits or perhaps corporation tax. And external perception as well. So how do people view the organization and what they do based on what kind of legal structure they adopt and their kind of objectives as an organization, right? So very important. So an unincorporated association. So an unincorporated association is simply, in theory, the 12 of us, 13 of us could go and set up an unincorporated association right here. And that would just be a loose agreement between members of a club that say, this is what we're going to do as a club. It's not a legal entity. It's just a loose collection of people bound together by a constitution, right? So we could go and set up a badminton club right here today, okay? And that would be an unincorporated association. Hasn't got a legal entity. It's just loose. It's flexible. It's very simple to administer. We don't need to produce accounts for the government or anything like that. We would perhaps create some accounts for our members. So we would want to see how the organization was performing, but it's very flexible, very low administration. Okay. But it doesn't have a legal personality. So it's just a loose collection of individuals bound together by a constitution. Okay. So that's great because it's flexible. We just want to have fun, play badminton as a sport, right? We're not really interested in perhaps developing a clubhouse or getting a team to the top of the badminton rankings. We're really just about playing badminton, getting people participating in badminton. We don't really want to own property or have any assets. Okay. The disadvantage of an unincorporated association is because it's not a legal entity. If something were to happen and the club didn't have any money in its bank account, we might be liable for something. So imagine there was something that happened while somebody was playing badminton. Perhaps we organize a fundraising event. It's a fireworks display or something, and something goes quite badly wrong. We get sued. The club can't afford to pay it. We could potentially be liable. Okay. So there's personal liability there for us if we're an unincorporated association. And there's lots of different examples of sports clubs that have perhaps been chased for money because they've undertaken activity, they've not had enough money in their bank account to pay for it, and that the individuals have been liable for it. The other issue is because it's not a legal entity, it's not viewed as a legal entity in the eyes of the law. So they technically can't enter into agreements with people, can't have, if you were to employ staff, imagine we got to a stage where we wanted to employ a coach, we would technically be entering into that agreement ourselves because that legal entity isn't set up to be able to do that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So again, if we wanted to own property, it would have to be in the name of the individuals rather than the club. Okay, so it's good. So often when you're thinking about a club incorporating, it's because they want to take on bigger assets. They perhaps want to employ staff where there could be personal liability otherwise. It's because they want to develop a facility. Excuse me. They want to develop property, okay, or purchase property, but they're worried about personal liability. So they might incorporate the club to become a more professional structure. Then the club owns different property, has contracts with people, right? So some examples of where it's gone wrong. So these are all examples of sports clubs that have perhaps been chased for money, and the club itself haven't had enough money in the bank account to pay for it. So there's an issue here about personal liability. So just to recap, the good things about unincorporated associations, very simple to set up, very easy to administer. They're quite private. We don't have to report into the government. We don't need to tell HMRC what we're doing necessarily. And it's very flexible. People are quite happy to deal with us on a day-by-day basis, and low compliance costs because we're not producing accounts that we're submitting to HMRC or don't have to go for any particular rigorous check. But as we say, the disadvantages of this is because it's not a legal entity, there's unlimited liability for us as individuals, as the committee members, okay? So it's not a corporate body, doesn't have a legal separate existence. We can't hold land and investments in the name of the club because it's not registered as an individual or a legal entity. And we can't enter into sort of formal contracts either. Okay, so a quick quiz based on that. I'm going to ask you 5 different scenarios, whether you think the club would need to incorporate or not, okay? Whether they would need to adopt a legal structure or not. So you can go to the QR code at the bottom there, or you can go to menti.com and put that code in at the top. Okay. Great. So, do you think in this first situation we need to incorporate or not? So the club wants to develop its own facility by taking on a community asset transfer. Do you think the club can stay unincorporated, or do you think that they would need to incorporate? Okay, good. Yeah, we probably should incorporate in this situation. Why do you think we should incorporate? What are you thinking? Why, if we were looking to develop our own facility and we were an unincorporated association, why do you think we would consider incorporation before trying to develop a facility?
I mean, I didn't get what community asset transfer.
Okay, so we are undertaking, we're taking on a piece of council-owned land.
Okay.
Yeah, but perhaps the important thing is we're developing our own facility on it as well. So why do you think perhaps we should think about incorporating in this situation?
Because it's like beneficial.
Could be beneficial, yeah. But perhaps the issue would be if we were looking to develop a facility, we're going to have to pay for builders. We've got quite a lot of costs. If something were to go wrong in the construction of the facility, we don't really want to potentially lose money ourselves, right? We need to set up the club in a way that can enter into those contracts in its own right. Yeah. Oh, Tony Cruz. Okay, question 2. Your club is a small club and it just provides services mainly to members. Do you think we need to incorporate in this situation, or do you think we can stay unincorporated? Yeah, good. We probably don't need to incorporate. Why?
It's just more members. So
Yeah, we're not really
simple, right?
simple. Yeah, we're not doing anything sort of big development wise. Good. Okay, question 3. Your club is seeking to employ a member of staff. Yeah, good. We probably should incorporate. Why do you think we should incorporate here? It's probably an issue if we stay unincorporated and we try to employ somebody. If for whatever reason that person wants to sue the club for unfair dismissal or something, that we would potentially all be liable for that, right? So if we incorporate, then we are protected from any liability on a personal basis. Okay, good. Question 4. Your club strongly values the simple setup, flexibility, and little administration it has. Yeah, good. So little administration, no compliance really. We probably want to stay unincorporated. Oh, let's all change. Got a new leader going into the last question. Question 5. Your club is thinking about applying for a loan. Good. So, issue here being if we can't repay that loan from the club's perspective for whatever reason, we don't really want to be personally liable to have to repay that rate. Good. Who was Brian? Who's Brian? Ah, well done. Congratulations. Okay. So now we've addressed what incorporation means. Okay. We've decided that we're going to incorporate our badminton club. We've got a few different choices. Okay. So we can stay unincorporated, and we've spoken about an unincorporated association. But once we made the decision we're going to incorporate, we've got a few different options here. So we've got a company. We've got a company limited by guarantee. Okay, so that's what the CLG is, company limited by guarantee. A company limited by shares, and a community interest company. Okay. We've got an industrial and provident society, which is also known as a community benefit society. And we've got a Scottish charitable incorporated organisation. Okay, so 5 different legal structures. So our company limited by guarantee, I'll kind of go through these kind of quickly. Now, what each of these does is gives us a separate legal entity. So we've incorporated, that's going to give us our separate legal entity. It will be a club in its own name that has its own bank account, okay, and can hold assets. So it can enter into contracts when it becomes a company limited by guarantee. It can hold assets or investments in its own name. Members are protected and only required to pay an agreed sum, which is typically £1, if the club becomes insolvent. So if the club can't continue to operate anymore, the members are usually just liable for £1. So there's limited liability there. Having this limited liability is going to protect the directors of the company and the members against the claim, provided the directors have been compliant. So we're protected as long as we don't do anything illegal as directors of that club or organisation. Now, there's going to be some administration and compliance involved because once we become a company, we need to report into HMRC, which is Her Majesty's Revenue. I can't remember the S. Doesn't matter. So it's about how do we pay tax as a business? Okay, we need to pay our tax as a business into the government, essentially. Now, we can become a company limited by guarantee and get grant funding, depending on how we write our constitution. So the purpose of the club. If it's about being a non-profit club, we're not looking to benefit from it financially in any way. We're not going to take money out of the club. We're just going to reinvest the money, any money that we do make, back into the activities of our badminton club. Okay, then that's going to be okay. And we might be able to qualify for some grant funding. So we might say something about the purpose of the club is to encourage people to come and play badminton. It's not profit. Anybody can join. We don't discriminate. You can just turn up and start playing badminton, essentially, right? So we could get some grant funding from somebody. Now, our company limited by shares, this is perhaps the most popular type of model for professional clubs. Okay, so if we've got a company limited by shares, we've got shareholders. Okay, so shareholders are where you would be able to take a dividend out of the club. So we may pay ourselves a dividend depending on if we've made profit as an organization. Okay, so this is going to be your more professional clubs. This is the likes of the clubs that are going to be in the Premier League. They're set up as company limited by shares, and they might have, I might own 30% and somebody else in the room might own 40% and somebody else might own 30%. And we can divvy up the dividends based on how much percentage we have. Now, when we have that kind of setup, we also have an element of however many shares you have might equate to how much voting power you have in that organization. So if you have over 50% of the shares, you have a majority stake and you can control how that organization is dictated. You might remember last year when Manchester United sold 25% of the shares to Sir Jim Ratcliffe, there was a big discussion about why would you buy 25% of the shares in a club, because that actually doesn't give you a majority say in how it's run. He spent a lot of money for 25%, but he has some agreement with the majority shareholder, the Glaziers, about what aspects of the club he's going to be able to control. So you have different types of shares perhaps as well. Some might come with voting rights, some might just be about a dividend. In theory, if a club has decided to go public and they're on the stock exchange, we could go and buy shares in that club and we might get a profit back or a dividend back depending on how well that organization performs. Okay. So they're the two that are going to be most common for clubs that are perhaps professional and they are perhaps looking for investors. They're looking to get money in to develop the organization going forward. But actually, sports clubs have got lots of social value as well, right? We've spoken about how They could provide lots of health benefits, physical activity benefits, and they have a lot of community benefit. So if it's set up as a company, what kind of distinguishes it from any other type of business like a supermarket, right? So the fact that sport is very different perhaps needs a legal structure to say that it's different and it has this kind of other benefit and offerings to society. So clubs, the aims of the club are likely to be very different from those of a business, which are going to be about profit maximization. So a company limited by shares might be a very suitable setup for Tesco's or Sainsbury's or the supermarkets that you see in the UK, right? But actually, if our club doesn't really operate like that, and we're a non-profit, and actually we're going to put money back into the club rather than taking it out, we've got these other legal structures. So we've got Community Benefit Society, a community interest company, and a charity, a Scottish charitable incorporated organisation. So in order to become recognised as one of these, our organisation needs to have its objects or its purpose set up to be around participation and encouraging people to come and get involved in our club in some way. So we could go for a community interest company. Okay, so a community interest company is very similar structure to a company limited by guarantee, but the fact that it's called a community interest company tells people that it's got a broader purpose. It's got a broader social purpose, a broader community purpose. So it's a company that operates for the benefit of the company. Now that could be a geographical community. So it could be we could set up our badminton club for people in Stirling, or it could be a community of interest. So it could be people that like badminton, and it doesn't really matter where you're from. Yeah. So in order to become a community interest company, we need to apply and demonstrate community benefit. The company members will enjoy limited liability, so they're protected from how it works, from any issues that might arise. They need to meet certain requirements which set out how assets can be used. So our assets, say we develop a facility, we can't then sell that facility and distribute the money to all the directors of the company or the members. It needs to go back into the similar kind of organization. So there's no private benefit there. And it provides us with a clear, limited company structure, and one that is seen as being more than just a typical business or company, right? There's no tax relief, but there's some additional administration. So we have to write every year about how we've worked towards our objective as a community interest company. Our second one is a community benefit society. So this is like a cooperative, okay? So we can all become a member and we all get one member, one vote. So we all treated equally. It doesn't matter how much money we put into the club. We all have one vote. So it's very different from that limited by shares model where you have people with controlling says. We're all equal. Doesn't matter. Again, I could put in £10,000 and somebody could put in £50,000. We're going to have the same vote. Okay. Operates as a cooperative, as I say, one member, one vote, and it's regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority, not Companies House. And then finally, which is where most community clubs would go down the route of, is becoming a charity. So the club has a purpose which is about broadening public participation in a sport, but a charity gives you the most tax advantages. There's the most incentive for a club to become a charity because they can get different tax benefits. Okay, so it offers the benefit of being a SCIO, or a Scottish Charitable Incorporated Organisation. Offers the benefit of both being incorporated but offering charitable status as well. Okay, simple mechanism for a charity to trade. Regulated by one body, which is OSCA, for the regulator for charities in Scotland. Okay, and we would need to meet the charity test or pass the charity test to become registered as a charity. So a set of legal requirements that the organisation needs to pass to become a charity and be entered into OSCA's register, and that shows that we've only got charitable purposes and that we provide public benefit in achieving those purposes. So you might think it's a bit of a strange one, a sports club being a charity, but if you think about what the purpose of those clubs are, often they're about getting people involved in playing a sport for the physical and health benefits. We're all familiar with the benefits of being involved in a sports club. It might be about social community and tackling social isolation, perhaps, or it could just be about getting people fit and active and taking up a sport. So actually, they work quite well as charities because they achieve a lot of public and social benefit, right? But sort of larger semi-professional clubs are not eligible to become charities because if you're paying players, you're more about perhaps elite sport and competitive sport rather than community participation. Does that make sense? Okay. So the advantages of charitable status, the big one is tax relief. So if you're registered as a charity in the UK, you get you don't have to pay corporation tax, which so say the club ends up with a profit at the end of the year, corporation tax would be 25% of that you would have to pay to the government. Charities don't have to pay that. You get business rates relief. So say you have a clubhouse and you would typically have to pay business rates to the local authority. You get 80% relief from the local authority, and you might also get the extra 20% at the discretion of the local authority. Public perception. So people view your organisation quite differently if you're registered as a charity. People are familiar with what charities are and what they do. Okay, so they might be more likely to donate to it. Fundraising. Grant funders will probably be more likely to give to a charity than any other type of body. So it's going to encourage your club to get more grant funding, perhaps. And there's other benefits as well. Drawbacks of charitable status, administration. So because you're getting lots of tax benefits, there's a requirement to report in and be more compliant with how you operate. So it's important that if you have charitable status, that you abide by charity law and that you're also reporting into OSCA and making sure that you are up to date with your accounts and not doing anything that charities shouldn't be doing. Okay. Oh, yeah.
Additional, the previous slide.
Yeah.
Additional administrative burden from whom?
It's for the club. For the club. So they need to report into OSCA on an annual basis, and their accounts need to include the trustees need to write a report saying what they've done as a club over the past year, how they've worked towards their charitable purposes. You need to do your financial accounts. Somebody needs to come and look at your accounts and say, yes, this is a fair representation of how the organization has performed financially. So there's just quite a bit more work involved.
More scrutinized.
And more scrutinized as well, yeah. So OSCA will look at it. If you're late, it will come up on your profile as saying you've submitted your accounts late or something was missing, yeah. Okay, so I know that was quite quick. That was quite a lot to take in. But again, I'm going to give you a quick quiz. How much did you take in? Okay. So this is quite a hard quiz, so don't worry too much. But which of the following legal structures is owned by its members? There's 2 correct answers here, but you just need to give one. Yeah, it's a community benefit society, so the cooperative, 1 member, 1 vote, or it could be a company limited by guarantee. Question 2. Which of the following legal structures must be for the benefit of the community? Yes, good. Our community benefit society. Which of the following has no separate legal entity? Yep. Good. Are an incorporated association. Which of the following combines charitable status and an incorporated entity in one structure? Good. Our charitable, our skio, yeah. Which of the following legal structures can be public or private? Yeah, good. Company limited by shares. Which of the following legal structures has no formal legal requirements? Yeah, good. Unincorporated association. Oops, sorry. Good. And then last question. Which of the following legal structures sees individuals have unlimited liability? Good. And the winner. Full change at the end. Who's GOAT? Well done. Is that twice? 2 wins? 2 wins today? Well done. Okay, what I want you to do quickly is go onto Canvas. And each week, what I've done is set up a little quiz for you to do. So if you go to classes, go to this week, there's a quiz at the bottom, okay? So what I'd like you to do is just have a go through that, and I will be back in a minute.
We should start now.
Okay, how do we do? Okay. Right. So hopefully that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of different legal structures and how different types of finance might affect them. So if we are thinking about a company limited by shares, there's going to be an aspect where that's going to be about perhaps more income generation and focus on profit, right? Because we're perhaps thinking about being profitable because we want to pay dividends to shareholders, right? So we can see a kind of a quick overview of all of those different types of legal structures here and how they might be affected by different regulations or benefits, for example. I'm not going to expect you to go through all of that just now. But two things I want to talk to you about. So one thing is about a community amateur sports club. So if you remember at the beginning of the lecture, we spoke about that kitchen tabletop boardroom style. Okay, so this is going to be the type of tax wrapper that a club like that might be able to apply for. So we have our kitchen table model, and we have something called a community amateur sports club, which is a tax wrapper available to community amateur clubs. So clubs that are set up around community benefit and community participation. Now, it's not a legal structure, so it doesn't give us that limited liability legal protection that perhaps a SKIO might. But it's a tax wrapper which allows that club to benefit from certain tax benefits. Okay. providing it's set up to facilitate public participation in sporting activities across the whole community. So to satisfy becoming a CASC, as it's referred to, it needs to be a recognised sport. So it needs to be a sport that provides health benefits for you to participate in, to be able to offer that kind of physical activity benefit. Its core purpose has got to be promoting amateur sport. It needs to be open to all sections of the community and have and sets limits on the cost for members and level of income generation. It needs to be non-profit making, so the money needs to go back into the club. It can't be distributed to the members. There needs to be some restrictions in the governing document about what would happen if the club, they decided to wind the club up and disband the club. What happens to those assets? Do they go to another charity? Do they go to another community amateur sports club? The people involved in running the club have to be fit and proper people, and 50% of the membership must be participating in the sport itself. So they can't just have a really big social club element. It needs to be about people actually playing the sport, right? So why would a club want to get this recognition? Well, you can claim tax-free income from non-members. So perhaps you have a bar and you generate a lot of income from non-members, so £100,000. You get a minimum 80% reduction in business rates. So if you have a clubhouse or a premise of some sort, then you don't have to pay business rates on that. And you have the ability to make payments to players to recognise their contribution. So £10,000 budget across the whole team. Okay. And you also have the ability to claim gift aid on donations. So we'll come to gift aid in a second. So gift aid for both community amateur sports clubs and charities. Gift aid is something that you can do. So our badminton club, say we become a CASC, and somebody donates £100 to the club and they want us to use it to continue developing badminton, we can claim 25p in every pound that's been donated to us. So it's £25 essentially extra that we can get through gift aid, right? So a quarter of whatever's donated, you can claim back in gift aid and use that to support your club, okay? So you can also claim gift aid on cash donations up to £30 per individual, as long as you have a gift aid declaration form, which needs to be returned to HMRC. So a couple of examples of how community amateur sports club status can be affected here. So we've got a bowls club here on the left, right? They've got a clubhouse, changing room, bowls green and car park. And they've got a total annual income of £60,000, none of which is donations. Before they're registered as a CASC, their annual rates cost was £6,495. And after they became registered as a CASC, their annual rates reduced to £1,300. Why has that happened? What aspect of the CASC benefit? Yep.
The tax relief, 80% tax relief on business rates allows
Good.
them to.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, so now they've become registered. This hopefully should be 20% of that. So that's all you would have left to pay. Our sailing club, we've got the lake, the boathouse, the boat shed, and the boat park. Okay, our total income is £42,000, £3,200 of which is donations, and our annual rates cost of £4,000. Now we have the benefit of the 80% relief on our business rates, so that reduces to £800. But we can also claim the gift aid on the £3,200, so that should be 25% of £3,200. Okay. So you can see why it'd be quite advantageous for a club to become recognised as a charity or as a community amateur sports club. Okay. Right. Last one for you. I want you to think about how much you could claim or whether you could claim gift aid in these situations. One thing I should have said is charities can also claim gift aid on their membership fees. So you've got members that are paying you £10 a month. You could claim gift aid on that, whereas a CASC can only claim gift aid on donations. Okay. So in each of these scenarios, I want you to say whether the club can claim all, part, or none of the money that is given to the club.
I didn't join.
It's okay. You can go to menti.com and put the code at the top.
Three. 3143.
Okay. So, a volunteer makes a 40-mile trip to do some trials, which cost £20 in fuel. They say the club can keep the expenses as a donation. What can you claim? So they're donating essentially £20 to the club. What can you claim? You can claim all of it because they're giving it to the club as a donation at £20. Yep. Good. Okay. Can the club claim all, part, or none of the £500 given to the club in this scenario? A cricket club is struggling after some bad weather and finances are bad. One member offers £500 on the condition that they pay it back at the year end. Can they claim all of it, none of it, or part of it? Yeah, you can't claim any of it because they're wanting the money back. So it's not a donation, okay? That one tricked you. Okay, can you claim all, part, or none of the £300 given to members in this scenario? A football club or a community amateur sports club and charge their members £250 membership subscription. Some members choose to pay an extra £50 as a donation. Can you claim all, part, or none of it? You can claim part of it because only the £50 is a donation. If they were a charity, they might have been able to claim some of the rest in membership fees. Okay. So appreciate that's a little bit tricky. Not expecting you to be tax experts or anything. But a quick. Oh, sorry. So the winner was Brian again. Congratulations. Okay. So, just to conclude, the way the club is structured and set up, it sounds a bit boring, but actually it's quite important. So it's going to affect the types of funding it's going to be able to attract. It's going to affect the types of tax that it's able to benefit from. And it's also going to affect its governance arrangements. Okay, so quite important to think about how clubs are structured, who owns them, how are they governed, okay, where do they get their sources of funding from. Now, hopefully, at the end of this session, you'll be able to describe the different sources of funding for different models of sports clubs. So those community amateur ones, the professional ones, be able to tell the difference between what an unincorporated sports club is and what an incorporated sports club is and what that means. And you'll be able to discuss the various legal structures which are open to clubs. So the community amateur sports club, the community benefit society, the community interest company, for example, community limited by shares. And you'll be able to outline what charitable status and community amateur sports club status means for clubs in terms of funding. Any questions about anything we've done today? Or is that quite a lot of information to take in at once? Okay, well, we'll finish early this week. Next week, we're going to start looking at your first assignment. So, as I say, if you can bring your laptops, we're going to be doing some budgeting and some examples on Microsoft Excel. So if you can make sure you bring a laptop and have Microsoft Excel installed on it, you can access Excel through the university if you don't have it already. Okay. So if you're having any issues, go down to the library and take your computer, or you can borrow one from the library as well. But we'll start looking ahead to the first assignment. We'll go through what you need to do for it, and we'll get you working through some examples. Yeah. Okay, you're free to go. Thank you very much.
About
Yeah.
So I was actually came.
Yes. Yeah.
So like I missed out on a few reasons.
Okay.
Then the reading that you suggest before the function.
Probably before, if you've got the time to do them. There's quite a lot of reading each week, so there's more expecting everyone to do reading every week, but at least have a look at different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One and two.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 0 I can do
Yeah. 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 So there's if you got familiar with
Yeah, I have.